Hi everyone, welcome to Child at Heart. Today we'll be talking about dyslexia, all about dyslexia. Do you want to find out what dyslexia is, what it is not, the myths and the confusions about dyslexia? Do you want to find out how you can help a child that you've detected that this child has dyslexia? Join us today as we look into it in details. Now, what is dyslexia? Dyslexia is a learning difficulty or a learning disorder that is characterized by inability to read properly or inability for the brain to process reading, and the child is having difficulty reading. Dyslexia can also be said to be inability for the child to read or a difficulty in reading. So you can simply say that dyslexia is a learning disorder that is characterized by difficulty in reading. Someone will ask, what are the causes of dyslexia, or what causes dyslexia? Dyslexia is caused by individual differences in the way the brain is wired. The part of the brain that enables reading is wired differently for a child that has dyslexia. Dyslexia has been observed to also run in families. This means that it appears to be linked to certain genes that affect how the brain processes language and reading. So you see a child that has dyslexia, the child takes their time to say the word, takes their time to read the word. Most times they read backwards. Most times you see a child that has dyslexia, instead of calling b, they call it d. Instead of calling d, they call it b. So they try to mix these letters, mix this word, because the way their brain is wired is different. Take note, a child that has dyslexia is not dull. Dyslexia is not a disease. It just means that the child's brain is wired differently. In the process of this video, you will find out the strengths of dyslexia, the flip side of the challenges that dyslexias experience or dyslexics experience. And then you find out how you can help a dyslexia. Now that we know what dyslexia is and the causes of dyslexia, what do you do as a teacher? What do you do as a parent or as a school to intervene and work with a dyslexic to be able to help the person read properly and understand, or to be able to be prompt in reading and not take too much time to read, or to mix the letters or to mix the sounds? We will discuss that in details. What are the challenges that dyslexics experience? Before I go into the challenges that dyslexics experience, I'd like you to know that dyslexia is not a disease, so it can be cured. Dyslexics are not broken, so they can't be fixed. Their brain is just wired differently. The first challenge a dyslexic experiences is reading. Like we all know, it's majorly a reading difficulty. Reading because that part of the brain that processes language is affected by the genes. So the child takes their time. The child takes their time to read, takes their time to process it. So reading is actually difficult, where the child is meant to read bad or bad. The b becomes the, and the d becomes b. The second challenge a dyslexic experience is time awareness. While they're trying to process these letters, while they're trying to process these words, while they're trying to read, time is fast spent. So you see a child that is not experiencing dyslexia, or a child that has overcome dyslexia, reading fluently or faster than a child that is experiencing dyslexia or still in the process of overcoming dyslexia. So they are not aware of the time. Most times while they're trying to process, they get tired, they get frustrated, and they put their heads down on the desk. Sometimes they start frowning, sometimes they have anxiety, sometimes they look depressed because time is far spent. And while they are taking their time, they get to forget the moment, they get to forget what they are doing. So they are not aware of the time. That's one challenge a dyslexic experiences. The third challenge is writing and spelling. Obviously, because they are not able to read, they are taking their time to understand and process the letters and what they are meant to read. They can't write down. Most times when they write down, they write either upwards or downwards, or they don't write on the line. This is one of the challenges that dyslexics experience. Spelling, the sounds, the phonics are confused. They are mumbled up. They are mixed together. They can't separate this sound from the other sound. From the pictures, you will see that in their brain, it's not that the sounds are not there, but they are mumbled up. So they're not able to spell correctly. They're not able to write, put down what they have read or what they have spelled or what they are reading or what they are seeing. The fourth challenge dyslexics experience is rote memory. Rote memory in the sense that the math skills are not as fast as they should. They don't grasp it like the other children would. So they will need an aid like calculator, speech text. For instance, the way I'm talking, you're seeing what I'm saying. Most times if you want to explain something to them or you want to teach them something, words and sounds, you have to say it and match it with the text. So they are matching the sound with the text. These are more like the major challenges dyslexics experience. It is exciting to know that the flip side of these challenges we just looked at, or the strengths of dyslexics, are that they are good problem solvers. Yes, and very creative. They do well with the fix it, make it, do it kind of careers. They proffer solutions. They are multi-sensory. Another strength of dyslexics is that they have good social skills. They interact well with people, they connect well with people, and they have empathy. Another strength is that they are very observant. Now we're going to look at how can you work with dyslexics to overcome this reading difficulty. How can you help them? What can you do as a parent? What can you do as a teacher? What can you do as a school, as a home tutor to help dyslexics become better in reading, better in spelling, better in writing, in note-taking, prompt and fluent as they communicate, as they put down what they are reading? What can you do to help them? Talking about how you can help a dyslexic overcome their delays or their challenges in reading, I have decided to divide it into three major categories. The first one I'm going to be talking about is mind strength, exploring the mind strength of a dyslexic. The second major category I'm going to use to help, I'm going to talk about how to help a dyslexic, is implementing the Orton Gilham multi-sensory process. And the third one will be the general teaching strategies that you can use to help a dyslexic. These general teaching strategies can work for any teacher, for any parent, for anyone that is working with a dyslexic child or that is working to see that a dyslexic child overcomes their reading difficulty. The mind strength of a dyslexic is actually a way or an approach you can use to teach a dyslexic child easily. The mind strength is also a test. It's also a way to test the level of a child's dyslexia. Aside that, you can use it, you can tweak it to use it to teach a child and help them overcome their language or their reading difficulty. The mind strength has to do with the material reasoning, the interconnected reasoning, the dynamic reasoning, and the narrative reasoning. I'd explain what I mean by that. The material reasoning has to do with the tools. Sometimes you might need to use tools to teach a child, depending on the topic that you're teaching the child or the word that you're teaching the child. You might need to bring a ball if you want to pronounce a ball, or you want the child to learn the word ball, you might bring a ball and try around explaining to the child, this is a ball. Can you hold the ball? Can you play with the ball? So you can introduce your class by either playing with the ball, materials that can help explain easily what you're trying to teach the child, or the concept or the topic you're trying to teach the child. That is about material reasoning. So the child is reasoning through the materials. Now, interconnected reasoning. Now, there are things that you can use to teach another subject or another word. There are words that are interconnected to other words. For instance, when you talk about shoes, you talk about socks. Before you put on your shoes, you have to put on your socks. They are interconnected. You find words that are interconnected to each other that the child can on their own imagine, on their own walk through their mind to come up with what it will be or what the solution will be. That is another way of teaching a child with dyslexia. You find out that they are the ones popping up the words, they are the ones suggesting the letters, they are the ones suggesting the sounds that should come after or before. Talking about narrative reasoning, now you tell them stories. When you want to teach a concept, or you want to teach a word, or you want to teach, they have to read a comprehension passage. You can come up with a story and allow them to tell the story. While they are telling the story, you're picking out the key words that you know that might be difficult for the child to read or comprehend. Then the child on their own can retell the stories, or you can even ask them, instead of saying, write a comprehension about yourself or a composition about yourself, you can tell the child, tell me what happened during your holidays. Then the child starts telling you. As the child is telling you, you're picking out the words. The child on their own will now start finding those words easy to pronounce, easy to understand, easy to write down. So narrative reasoning is also a way of exploring the mind of a child that is experiencing dyslexia. Another reasoning is the dynamic reasoning. What do you think will happen after this? When it rains, what do you think you need? An umbrella. Okay, so the child on their own are thinking in their mind, what comes next? What do I do? What should be done? So the sum total of exploring or harnessing the mind strength or using it as an approach to teach a dyslexia has to do with attention activities, concentration activities, word games, puzzles, logic and reasoning activities. That is another approach you can use to teach a dyslexic child. Moving on to the Orton Gilham approach. The sensory approach of teaching a dyslexic child has a lot to do with the auditory, the visual, and the kinetics. The auditory, the visual, and the kinetics. The auditory has to do with the hearing, the visual has to do with the seeing, and then the kinetics has to do with the writing. The Orton Gilham multi-sensory approach, I call it the read it, say it, and write it approach. They read it, they say it out, and then they write it. It's as simple as that. So for a child that is experiencing delay in reading, delay in writing, delay in speaking or spelling, when you take your time to ask the child, what do you see? The child sees a picture of a hand. And then you tell the child, so read what you see. I see a hand. Say it. Hand, ha, and write it. That is what the Orton Gilham approach or the Orton Gilham multi-sensory approach is all about. The third approach in helping a dyslexic overcome their reading difficulty is a general teaching technique, the general teaching strategy that works best for everybody, is easy to implement. The first one is encouragement. Encourage a child that is experiencing dyslexia. They like to be encouraged. They don't like to be discouraged. Shut down on the body language that discourages a child while you're teaching them or while you're helping or supporting the child. There's some kind of body language you put up that you're tired, and it discourages the child. Anything that you will do or you would say that discourages the child is not going to help that child. Speak words of encouragement, show action that you're encouraging the child. Do not get tired of looking at their work. Do not get tired of showing them what to do and asking them nicely. Encouraging them, speaking words of encouragement to them helps a lot in building their self-esteem to do more in reading, in making more attempts. The second I'm going to talk about is allow extra time. For every dyslexic child, now you know what it is, now you understand the cause, now you know that it's not their fault, it's also not a disease. Your own part to play is to give them extra time. Allow extra time. Do not compare them with their counterparts that are faster, that are more fluent. Do not say words that will put them down. Allow more time and watch them as they improve. The third strategy I would ask that you use to help a child with dyslexia is to speak to them. Talk things over. Find out what is going on with them. When they come into class discouraged, come into class gloomy, or you see them sitting on their own, or perhaps there is an activity you've given them, or there's a work they're supposed to do, or they didn't do their work properly. You don't withdraw from them. You don't allow them to withdraw into their shell. You talk things over. They like to talk things over. The other step I'm going to talk about is teach using stories and text. Use teaching stories. For instance, we talked about the narrative reasoning. So, as much as possible, use stories to teach them, stories and pictures. They love that. They can be able to connect with these stories. They can be able to connect with these pictures. Interesting stories, exciting stories that will make them want to learn, want to express themselves, want to find out what these words are. There are also activities that you can implement. I'll talk about that later. The other step or other strategy that you would use that will work for you as a teacher, as a parent working with a child with dyslexia is do not overcorrect. Focus on the child working the process of overcoming this difficulty in reading. Do not overcorrect them. Once you overcorrect them, you lose their interest, you lose the concentration, their concentration. Do not overcorrect them. Instead, focus on what you're doing. Your focus should be that this child is able to understand, this child is able to read, this child is able to write, this child is able to spell. Do not overcorrect. Once you see yourself getting to or tending to overcorrecting them, you stop and try another strategy. Another strategy you can use to teach or to help dyslexics is assistive technology. For instance, the use of audio text or speech to text. Another technique you can use, or another strategy you can use, is to teach big pictures. Just like we've talked about, dyslexics are big thinkers. They are good big picture thinkers. So they like the large picture. They are also 3D thinkers. That is, they are three-dimensional thinkers. They think about the past, the present, the future. They have a way to connect. That is why using the narrative reasoning or narrative approach of reasoning to teach them is very important. Telling stories, using pictures, and all of that. Another technique that you can use to help a dyslexia is note-taking. Encourage a lot of note-taking. While they are taking notes, the Orton Gilham multi-sensory process is taking place, because when you say the word to them, they hear it, that's the auditory, they say it to themselves in their mind, and then they write it. As you're writing it, the kinetics, they are seeing it, they are visualizing it. So encourage a lot of note taking. Another strategy that you can also employ in helping a dyslexic child is break down information into steps. Do not mumble things up. Do not compound instructions. If you have instructions you want to give them, you have activities you want them to engage in, break it down into steps. Step 1, what do? You find the word S in the box. Step 2, what do? You go under the tree to find the word A. Step 3, what do? And so on and so forth. Break down information, instructions into steps. Now we've talked about dyslexia. Another side of dyslexia, or another part or a similar difficulty that people encounter, or you can talk about dyslexia without talking about it, is dysgraphia. Dysgraphia is also a learning difficulty that has to do with reading. All the symptoms, all the challenges that dyslexics experience, a child that has dysgraphia experiences the same. So just in case you've heard about the word dysgraphia and you don't know what it is, it's similar to dyslexia. So the solution or the help that you can offer to a child that is experiencing dyslexia is also the help you can offer to a child that is experiencing dysgraphia. Just that in dysgraphia, they do not write properly. They can mumble their writing, they do not write in a straight line, and all of that. But then the solution, or whatever you would use to help a child that is experiencing dyslexia, is the same you use for a child experiencing dysgraphia. Now we've come to the end of this video. I'm very sure that you've picked one thing or another that would help you work with a child experiencing dyslexia, and I want you as a parent to try to implement these things. I want you as a teacher to look into these things, make more research to find out how you can help a child with dyslexia or a dyslexic child. Remember, a dyslexic child is not suffering from any disease. Dyslexia is not a disease. Dyslexics are not broken. Dyslexia is not a disease, so it can be cured. Dyslexics are not broken, so they can be fixed. Their brains are just wired differently. They are very smart. They make good leaders. They are people that interact or connect well with other people. They have great interpersonal skills. Work with that child that is experiencing dyslexia today. Make that difference and help them overcome this reading difficulty. And you are one of the great changers in the world. Thank you very much, and God bless. I love you.